For our next session, we have with us Shri M R Venkatesh in an interesting conversation with Dr. Anand Ranganathan. An advocate practicing in New Delhi, Shri M R Venkatesh passed Chartered Accountancy in 1992 with an All India ranking and was in practice from 1993 till 2018 as a partner of GSV Associates, Chartered Accountants, Chennai. He has authored the following books: A Handbook on Anti-Dumping, which was released by the former Prime Minister of India, Sri Atal Bihari Vajpayee in 2001. A monograph on capital account convertibility, which was published in July 2006, as well as one on inflation, which was published in 2007. A book titled Global Imbalances and the Impending Dollar Crisis, which was published in September 2007 in Chennai. A detailed report on the farm sector in India in the context of the ongoing Doha round of negotiations and the ages of WTO. A book titled Sensex and Sentiments in 2011. A book titled Dr. Manmohan Singh, A Decade of Decay in 2013. The book demystifies the challenges confronting India and the Indian economy in the last decade. He is a visiting faculty in various professional institutions, chambers of commerce, and universities. Dr. Anand Ranganathan obtained his BSc Honours degree in chemistry from St. Stephen's College, Delhi, after which he left on a Nehru Centenary Scholarship for Cambridge, UK, where he obtained his BA in Natural Sciences, his MA, and his PhD. After a postdoctoral stint at Cambridge, Dr. Anand returned to India to join the International Centre for Genetic Engineering and Biotechnology, Delhi, where he supervised his lab for 16 years. In 2015, he joined the Special Center for Molecular Medicine, Jawaharlal Nehru University, Delhi, as an associate professor. His laboratory works in the area of directed evolution and pathogenesis, with special emphasis on tuberculosis and malaria. Dr. Anand is now a consulting editor and columnist for Swarajya. He has written previously for News Laundry, DNA, and the News Minute. He has also authored 3 novels. Shri M R Venkatesh will now indulge in a conversation with Dr. Anand Ranganathan on the topic Economic Imperative, Self-Sufficiency, and Autarky.
Thank you very much for the very kind introduction and kind of rubbing it in twice that I went on the Nehru Scholarship, but anyway, I'll ignore that. And by the way, so many kind people have got so much Mysore Pak for me, but since I tweeted that Badam Halwa is the new fascination, some kind soul has got Badam Halwa also. So next time, please, I request you, please get Badam Halwa.
Anand, you should know, in this part of the country, giving halwa is a pejorative term. Badam or no badam.
What was the title of your book again?
Retaining balance, the
Yes.
eternal.
Let's retain some balance. No, but it's a real pleasure to have MRV and to ask him a few questions that I had noted. Without much ado, let me, before I kind of wax eloquent about his book, for which I also gave a quote, MR, I want to jump straight into my first question, which is, why is modern economics in such a mess?
That's a very pertinent question, but the answer is the fact of the matter is the economics world around is in a mess. We are seeing this. Countries after countries are having its economics more like Ukraine than what it is painted out to be. We are having debt, global debt has crossed $325 trillion. The GDP of the world is around 85, stagnating. We are accumulating more debt. We don't know how to come out of it. But this is factual. But if you do a clinical analysis, economics as a discipline addresses the indisciplined. It is no longer a discipline of economics, it's the indiscipline of economics. It celebrates the indiscipline, it addresses the indiscipline, it talks about the indiscipline. So somewhere down the line, we have to shift the focus back to the discipline. And when we talk about the discipline, we talk about civilization. So there is a civilization cultural miss, or the missing middle I call it, in the discipline of economics. See, H2 plus O2 is 2H2O, whether you make it in America or in Australia. But you give a 100 rupee note to an American, he spends 107. You give 100 rupee note to an Indian, he spends 70. You give a 100 rupee note to a Chinese, he spends 55. So there is a cultural bias on which the entire subset of economic works. Economics is like a topping in a pizza. But the crust is your culture, crust is your civilization focus. Take away that civilization, take away the culture, and you treat all of them as equals, you find that it's difficult to homogenize the subject called economics. And that is what the West has done. The West has homogenized the economics the way they look at economics. I'm not here to say that's good, bad, ugly. I'm only saying that economics as a discipline more or less suits the West. That's why when you asked Ratanji a pertinent question this afternoon about
I was just coming to that, but
about the RSS view about economics, I would say it is still in an embryonic stage. RSS would love to have a view, but there is always a difficulty in a country as complex and diverse, and on a topic as diverse and as difficult as economics, to actually put out a product that will appeal to everybody. So you would be somebody who would say, privatize everything. And fairly so, you mean in all good intention. But there are people who believe that you allow privatization, rampant privatization, that cannot run in a country like this. You cannot privatize railways. You can do some parts of it, but you cannot. I think this must be the railway union interrupting me. So the point is very clear that there is an economic necessity and there is a practical possibility. We have to marry these two in our system, and I'm sure in the next 25 years we should do it. That is how we will actually what is this Amrit Utsav and other things that we are talking about, the next 25 years that the Prime Minister promises in the run-up to the centenary celebrations of the independence, will be focusing more on the economic side, for which we frankly said we don't have a model. The hard disk is empty.
so can you check if that's working again, or
No, I'll have to find out.
is that, yeah, could be.
Yeah, you carry it.
Yeah, so but as a scientist, your explanation, Anna, is very troubling for me, because as I said, I don't hate the gray. I'm not a fan of the gray. I'm a fan of the black and white, and I truly believe that if you prove or if you show or conduct an experiment successfully in the lab, you should be able to reproduce it on any scale. So here is the question for you. Do you believe in extrapolation? Do you believe in reproduction of an experiment at a scale which is a much larger scale than what happens in the laboratory if it succeeds? So essentially what you're saying is that when you said, look, yes, Anand, you believe in privatization, on the whole it's a good thing, but in a country like India, it doesn't work. So essentially what you're saying is I can't extrapolate it, I can't reproduce it on a scale that I desire. So my question is, why?
Because we tried two grand experiments in the last 70 years. One was socialism, one was globalization. We didn't know whether the globalization had ZATION or SATION. And we fell through, and we could not actually find out what was this. And both of this has been given a silent, decent burial.
Globalization has been given a burial?
Now, no world leader talks about globalization, and none of us. India was the last set of leaders. The Congress Party was the long, set of leaders from the Congress Party India who were talking about globalization, and they also do not talk about globalization. When did Modi talk about globalization?
Well, they might not talk about it, but the fact is we are so deeply entrenched in it that our imports from China this year were the highest ever, $120 billion. So we are $100 billion. So we are totally entrenched in a globalized economy.
Trade is not globalization.
Culture is.
No. Globalization has several parts, of which trade is one part. Now, a country like India cannot isolate itself and become a North Korea. We can't shut our borders. We can't say that we will not buy anything from the world, or we will not export anything to the world. You know, a jetliner falls somewhere in the remote Pacific, you will find 10 Indians there. You know, that's the power of, we are 1/6 of humanity. So you don't have to feel squeamish about it. We'll have to deal with the world. We'll have to engage with the world. But that is not globalization. What is globalization in my view? See, there are systems, there are practices, there are controlling factors which determine globalization. Now, let us take the dollar. Now, many of us here would believe that the Ukraine war is for a piece of land or to control Ukraine. And I am one of those who believe it is not. It is for challenging the hegemony of the dollar. Now, dollar, why has it become the dominant currency of the world? Well, are you going to give badam halwa to me for that? Okay, you can. Okay. Now, the point is that the dollar has become the global currency for a variety of historical reasons. We have also accepted it. And when we trade with China, we don't determine the trade in yuan or in rupees. You said it. It's $100 billion of imports from China. You never said 7.5 trillion yuan or rupees. The fact is that we have, as a country, we have seen that is failing historically. The trade with so many countries is failing. SWIFT has failed now. SWIFT, which was supposed to be the best of systems, which held on since 1945, has collapsed last week. Now, where is globalization in all these things? You can still say theoretically globalization works. Now, come to socialism. Socialism was an experiment, and I would urge you to let us focus on socialism more in the remaining part of the conversation. Socialism was basically an import. It was never an Indian concept. That I will have to be supinely indifferent to myself, and the state will take care of me. That is the idea of socialism. It has failed world over, and probably it is in some part of the world, it's still in some success. But India has never accepted socialism, and India has given it a silent burial. That was what the new economic policy, that was what supposed to be the new economic policy of 91. You may say that it still exists in the preamble of the Constitution.
It exists to such an extent that it is debilitating for India.
I agree with you, Anand. The fact of the matter, it exists in the political parties. I'm talking about the society, which is different from the state.
It totally exists in society to such an extent, Anna, that you are saying that we cannot have privatization in the railways. You yourself are accepting.
Anand, that doesn't make us a socialist state. Please understand. That is a state which runs the railways because of a variety of, what shall I say, managerial reasons. Supposing I help you and give you a blood, God forbid, 300 ml of blood, if you meet with an accident, doesn't make you survive on my blood eternally. That is a managerial issue, that we don't have the managerial bandwidth in a private sector company to maintain Indian Railways. Simple. It's such a humongous organization. It's too big that we cannot privatize it. It is not so easy, sir. It is not so easy that you break Indian Railways and privatize it. It all can be said in a closed environment. Very difficult. Even to privatize Air India, let us come to the easier part. It has taken 8 long years.
Yeah, but that's not an issue which is ideological. That issue is because we had politicians who were so scared, and unions who were overbearing. It's not a question that it has taken 10 years for us to privatize because there was something wrong or we were figuring out what is right or wrong in privatization. It is simple fact that people had cold feet. Politicians did not have the guts to go on with it.
Partially, politics plays a very important role in economics. I agree with you. And you and I are people who don't have to really worry about election. But 6 months down the line, the priority of this government will be to win Gujarat elections. So politics or economics be damned, we will have to look at it. And the mandate of a political party is to win elections. Let us be very clear. There is no goody-goody things, or people are not going to say that, look, you have done your economic policies well, but you have failed at the ballots. So people are not going to accept it. So understand one thing, that there are vested interests. And vested interests have developed in the last 70 years. But what I'm talking about is to step back from looking at it, what should be the state policy, to what is traditionally the Indian policy. The Indian policy, the traditional economic policy, which is what I was alluding to, has been to be self-dependent and self-sufficient.
Atmanirbhar.
I don't use such bombastic names, but we would like to be a society which would depend on itself. Okay, self-contained, self-sufficient. In that, trade may be important. In that, I don't want anything but a piece of loincloth is what I may require. Those things are left to the individual. But as a society, we were more conscious about placing the individual at the center of economic policies, and states used to make their policies at a residual level. A residuary state. What happened, I tell you. I think there was some speaker, I forgot who it was, alluded to about Article I think Maniji's talk about 1935 Government of India Act. He also talked about how the Constitution was framed under the overarching guidance of the 1935 Government of India Act. Now, if you read the Government of India Act, you read Part 7 of Schedule 7, Part 1, Part 2, Part 3 of the Constitution, you find the state can come into your bedroom. It comes in marriages, it comes in divorces, if you have children, Guardianship Act, every damn thing the state is there. If you want to educate your child, right to education. Now the state has taken an omnipotent, omnipresent position, dominant position. This was acceptable to government of Britain to rule us. But this is not a classical Indian position of the state. Where Article 12 has to be rewritten as to what is the duties of the state, what is the rights of the state.
So there you have to specify what was and what wasn't written as an Indian concept, and how long you are talking about. Because if we go back to, for example, the Upanishads, or say Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, the world is a family, and the fact that Indians have always excelled in trading globally. In fact, some of the people have discovered lands because they wanted to trade with India and wanted to find where India is, and the other way around. If you look at the migration, the gaining theory of out of India concept, if you go to Iran, and so the fact is we've always traded with the world. We've always believed, or the Indian way, the Hindu way has believed that the world is a family. Let us interact with. The more we interact with it, the more powerful we become. Is that not at variance with what you are saying as to how right now we somehow have suddenly shunned that concept?
Let me tell you about the Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. First, always there is a contrarian position in the Indian classical texts. One of the as you say, I did an analysis where from this comes, and it comes, I'm told, from the Maha Upanishad.
Yes.
And there, a jackal seems to...
Two stories. So it also is in Panchatantra, but it also is in Maha Upanishad.
Maha Upanishad. The Maha Upanishad story is that the jackal calls the goat to have, come to this side of the stream because the grass is green, and says, come, let us have it. The crow wants it and says, don't come, this fellow is calling you to kill you. And then the jackal says, come this side, we are all one, we are all Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. So there is always, that's the story. But the point I'm trying to say is, we never feared trade. We never feared to interact with the world. We never feared to have a dialogue with the world. Best of our philosophers have dialogue, sometimes one, sometimes step back. But as I said, we were never a closed or an iron curtain clad society. But at the same time, we retained our independence and our position in whatever we did. We never allowed ourselves to be swept off the feet. Now, the classical Indian position as to whether railways to be owned by the government or railways to be owned by the private was never cast in stone also. Let us be clear about it. It shifted back and forth as to what should be the role of the state. The state was like an emergency lamp in the classical Indian position. This lamp goes in, the emergency lamp comes in automatically and quickly. It never waited. So I would like to go back to that state without defining the duties in A, B, C, D in one schedule. If you read part 1, part 2, part 3 of schedule 7, you are horrified that what type of draconian laws were being thought about by the British to intrude into your privacy. It is a question of Swadeshi means Swadeshi or Swadharma or independence doesn't mean at the state level or a political level. It talks about you as an individual to be liberated from the states, the clutches of the state. That is what we are lacking today.
But then here is the question. When you, who is very liberal minded when it comes to economy and finance and general, your place in the society, knowing you, and when it especially comes to economic matters, you talk of individual rights, you are, capitalist by nature, you don't like socialism. But a person of your eminence is saying that when it comes to privatizing railways, India might have to think differently. It's not all that cut and dry. That is what you said. I mean, that was the import of your
Yes,
sense.
absolutely.
So where does the buck stop with you? Next you will say, when it comes to privatizing the banks that incidentally were privatized and we nationalized it, where do you end, where do you stop? Because you might say, look, nationalization of banks was also important because private banks might not reach that village which is 10,000 kilometers. You will always find an explanation or an excuse for socialism. This is the tragedy of socialism.
I think the Badam Alwa seems to have done wonders for you. You asked a very good question. Now, I will answer this. You have one more bit of Badam Alwa. Now, answer to this is very clear, Anand, that there is again no hard and fast rule. Like the gentleman there said that we should privatize railways and what you are batting for. I agree with you that this is what is lacking with us today. Has to have a very clear economic goal. We are looking at our century-year-old problems with 2-year term officials with 1-year budgets. This is not my words, this is the words of Nani Palkiwala. So the fact of the matter is we have certain issues that are there for centuries. Now you cannot, by using this idea of Vikas alone, Vikas is very much required. That's why the Prime Minister has now added Sabka Prayas. Now, if you notice it, that the Prime Minister has shifted it also to make it all inclusive, and he says Sabka Prayas. When I say Sabka Prayas, it includes everybody in the national progress and national development. And in that, individual liberty, individual rights are very important, and the state has to play a secondary role. When the state starts playing a secondary role, the individual perforce will take a very predominant role in terms of managing his economics, managing his development. That we have still not trusted the individual.
So here let me trap him completely, hook, line and sinker, because Ratan, my good friend, has just tweeted that he escaped very nicely from my clutches and I tried to trap him and all that, all very good. I have read your book, I have admired your book. My next question, when you just now finished by saying that, look, the state is going to give individual back its rights, sabka prayas hoga. What you meant was it will be an inclusive.
I quoted the Prime Minister, no less.
You don't believe that?
I believe him.
Okay, right. I won't ask on how many other matters you believe him, but that's a separate matter. So here is the real dichotomy which I have gleaned from your book, and here is the question. You believe and you say that a welfare state can no longer alleviate poverty.
Yes.
How will an individual alleviate poverty? How will an individual finance going to his daughter or son to a school or to a hospital or to so many other measures, Ujjwala, whatever, without the state coming in? Isn't there a dichotomy between individualism and the role of the state, as you've put it? Do I need another badam halwa?
Yes, you require tons of it. Okay. Now, as far as I am concerned, a welfare state has to be distinguished from a state which indulges in the welfare of the people. There are two different things. When you start saying that I will provide you Ujjwala, then you say right to education, I will interfere. Then I will do help you with Narega, Manrega, whatever it is. What you are not understanding is economics is not a subject without an effect. Every cause will have an effect. Every effect can be traced to a cause. What you are doing, you are expanding the role of the state and you are indulging in a massive collection exercise of taxes. And from whom do you collect taxes? You are collecting taxes from the most honest individual people who are taking care of themselves without the benefit of the state, without the help of the state. And you are sucking out money from the hands of those who are taking care of themselves, who are disciplined, who are managing their affairs, and giving it to those who need it, I understand. But in the process, you are also giving to those who are not requiring it merely because there is a devil called democracy for which you want to leverage it on.
So are you against the Nordic system, which is welfare state?
See, again,
high taxes and welfare state.
See, Nordic system will work in Sweden and in.
This is what I don't like. It's a successful experiment.
No,
you are against
let us
extrapolating it
now
or expanding it.
Now you can have that system in. That's why I said we draw on globalization, but we also stop at it because there are certain things which we cannot directly import and say that this is what will suit India best. You do it. For all that you know, yes, Anand. Who am I to say that it won't look good or it will look good? Who am I? If let us assume that for the sake of argument, let us say I agree with you, Anand. Is it that the view of the entire set of the population here, much less outside, that we should follow the Nordic system? The fact of the matter is we don't have a serious debate on economic policies. That is the crux of the issue. What we are having is that we are doing ad hocism. And in ad hocism, we look at elections. And in this election, democracy and populism. See, welfare state has degenerated into a populist state, from a populist state to a reckless state. And that is what worries me. And we have to draw a very clear list that the state will do this much and nothing more than this. And whatever it does beyond this will be only in emergencies. It cannot be that, as one sitting judge of a high court said, even if a man were to be in his house supinely indifferent to his own needs, it is the duty of the state to feed him three times a day. That is ridiculous. We cannot have that type of system. What it means is it creates a burden on you and me to feed the third man.
So can I put forward my argument and then
please,
you can destroy it. You're free to destroy it. I believe in the welfare state, though I am absolutely, and I am also from JNU, but I am not a communist, I am not a socialist.
Why do you say that every 5 minutes?
Just to reassure the public.
Okay.
So I believe that socialism can only work in a capitalist state. So I believe welfare state is a must, but in order for you to give money for that welfare or to provide money, you have to earn it through capitalism, capitalist mean, and that essentially is the Nordic system. Now, why do I say that I want a welfare state? Because it, and companies have realized it, that there is, people mistake capitalism as crony capitalism. No, there is nothing crony about capitalism. What is bad is crony capitalism. Capitalism isn't bad. If you look at the last 200, 300, 400 years, what has elevated or really removed real poverty from the world is actually capitalism. So what I want to say is that in a capitalist society, it pays for you in the long run or even in the short run to have a healthy workforce, to have an educated workforce, to have a workforce that can be very flexible so that if you lose a job in one, it's able to shift jobs. And how do you make people healthy, more flexible in an economy, more educated? Through welfare system. So it is a cycle that is sure to reap benefits for the nation. What do you find wrong in that when you say that welfare state is incompetent to elevate poverty in India. What else system do you foresee then?
Well, one is a factual thing, one is a prospective one. Now, the factual thing is India as a living example, socialism has failed. Otherwise, you wouldn't have poverty. If 70 years of your socialism, plus the rate of taxes which were probably as high as 88 odd percent, plus wealth tax which touched almost close to 100, did not elevate your poverty. So you have to understand we are a living example, and from Roman Empire, you take history, you find no socialist society or a nation succeeding for probably it may for a fleeting moment in history as you look back, 30, 40, 50 years it runs, but it never sustains itself over a longer period of time that you are a socialist nation or a socialist society or a socialist country and yet run for an elongated period of time. It collapses by the weight of its own contradictions. Now, what I find the problem is exorbitant, excessive, corrosive taxation system that inevitably takes over in any socialist society, intermediated by, as Mani sir would say, a very incompetent and a very corrosive bureaucratic lobby. Now take Tamil Nadu for instance, or my neighboring state Kerala. What is the main model of revenue? Forget that it collects large part of revenue from liquor, but the GST collection from the state would probably be going to pay the salaries of the bureaucracy. Please understand this. It's a very important thing that fact that I'm telling you. That the total collection of SGST in the state goes on to pay salaries and pension of the 1%, 1.5% class out of 100% population, and that is what is happening in Tamil Nadu. You add interest, you add state administration, you are done with 80% of the state revenue going on to fund 3 heads. Now, what do you have as development? What do you do out of for development of roads, railways, anything that that the state wants to do? Unfortunately, it is not doing anything. It is left to the center to actually develop any part of infrastructure for long-term needs. Even schools, for instance, it is by and large that it is getting privatized. Education is getting privatized for a simple reason: we don't get good education from government schools. Now, in Nordic society, it would be blasphemy if the cabinet secretary were to send his son to a private school. First, he can't afford it. Second thing, if he does, it would be blasphemy. In this country, private school is the destination of every single mother. Now, you don't require any money to change this. Probably a fiat by the government of India to say every babu who draws money from the consolidated fund of India or from the state exchequer will have to send his children up to 10th standard to government schools. This would change the manner in which, you don't have to worry about economic education policy. You don't have to worry whether they're teaching in Tamil or in Bengali or in English, whether calculus has to be introduced in 8th standard or 12th standard. Everything will be settled. I have gone to government schools. I have seen with my own naked eyes that the toilet doors don't exist in girls' schools. And you talk about women education, 80% literacy. How would you get it for women here when the school toilet is dysfunctional? And imagine for a moment, the education secretary's daughter is in that school. That school would have everything done pronto. So this is the type of socialism, the participative socialism. We are talking about socialism only for a theoretical purpose. We are so happy that the state is there. We are so happy that the state government or the central government will take care of it. But in reality, things are not working.
So let me trap you again, because
Don ko pakadna mushkil nahi, namumkin hai.
yeah, I admittedly you slither away from my tentacles. But
I learned from Ratanji.
no, but when you talked about you. See, what you say, you gave a long rope to not only the BJP, but to all political parties by saying that, look, ultimately the aim of a political party is to win an election, right? I mean, ultimately the aim of politics is to win elections. That's what you said. That is the root of the problem, because let us take AAP in Punjab. It promised 1,000 rupees to every woman if it gets elected, right? I and a lot of other people said, look, Punjab already has a debt of 2 lakh crores. If you combine all Indian states, the liability of all Indian states is actually 59 lakh crores. Ultimately, who pays for this? When Punjab already has 2 lakh crore debt, and now you have Mr. Maan asking 50,000 crores per year from the center for 2 years to fund all these policies. It's not just AAP. Tamil Nadu has a similar scheme. BJP ruled states have a similar scheme. So when you say, when you provided almost a moral long rope to politicians that win elections is the thing, this is the result of it, MRV. That you are providing a trap for them. They cannot get out of this trap ever. Because AAP is going to say, look, Modi ji did not provide us 50,000 crores, and as a result, we are not progressing. And they will say, why are they providing it to Shivraj Singh Chauhan, who has a similar scheme? Why are they providing it to Yogi Adityanath, who has a similar scheme? You see what I'm trying to say?
Have badam halwa. Okay.
It's becoming a habit.
Okay. Now the question is, you have brought the debate to a very interesting, or rather the conversation to a very interesting part.
We are running out of badam halwa, by the way.
Okay, I'll get it something for you. Don't worry. The balance sheet of Government of India for the year 31st March 22, presented by Nirmala ji only 70-80 days back, shows that Government of India has a debt of 125 lakh crores as of day after tomorrow, 31st March. No problem about it, Anand. If you have equivalent assets, that means you're a solvent person. She also goes on to say that out of 135 lakh crores or something, that number she gave, we will have around 80 lakh crores of liability without assets. That is the most worrying part. 2 lakh crores of debt of Punjab is not the problem. Probably 60-70,000 crores of asset will be remaining. Baki sab kha chuke hain. We have borrowed from our future generation and have carried on a party and have lived very happily in these last 20, 30, 40 years, and trying to, congratulate ourselves that we have got a 6% growth, 8% growth, whatever it is. And we are hallucinating about our sustained development model. This is what I want to talk about. That it is not a question of BJP, DMK, AAP, whatever. It is a question of our sustainability as a nation economically.
So here I have to, and sorry interrupt, because otherwise I might forget, I'm not taking notes.
Okay.
Are you saying that in the future we are looking at another, India becoming another Greece, and B, America also does it? Wo kare to, how does it go? Tum karo to chamatkar. Huh? So America lives in debt. How has the world accepted America living in debt for not just 50 years, for 70, 80 years?
See, you are having a foreign exchange reserves of $650 billion. Where has that money gone? It has gone to America. China has a foreign exchange reserve of close to $3 trillion. Where has that money gone? It has gone to America. America can borrow money. What it does, it prints notes and gives you. It takes goods from you, services from you. Then it gives dollar to you. You do not know what to do with the dollar. You lend back the dollar to America as debt, and America gives you pronotes. Now, when this was questioned, the man to question it was Saddam Hussein. And Saddam Hussein was invaded, hanged on a Vaikunta Ekadashi day at dawn, and he met Lord Vishnu at heaven. Okay, this is what globalization is. Finally, a Protestant Christian nation hanging a Muslim leader on a Vaikunta Ekadashi day and sending it to...
You can't get more secular than that, by the way.
Okay, absolute secular. Okay, now the part is, can India do that? The day you can do that, if you are the biggest bully in town, you can borrow from anybody, lend anything. You are not a bully. You are a small roadside bully in some corner of the world. That's all. Probably Bhutan and Sri Lanka or Maldives can get bullied by you. So your currency is no longer a global force like America. So you cannot adapt the policies of America and say we
You can't print money, you can't have helicopter money, you can't
do that. So the point, that is why I'm saying, What is cheese for the goose is definitely not cheese for the gander. You will have to have your own economic policies. And here, if you take, even here, 99% of the people will be worried about their individual debt. Debt is something, runa is something like, it has a very catastrophic influence on our psyche. That is why, Kadanpatta, Renjampol, Kalanginan, Ilangai Vendan. You know, Ravana goes to Lanka. The first day of the war, he thinks he can smash Rama and come back. Rama defeats him, and he has no Hasta Shastra. He says, Ravana, go, you fought well. Like you are debating, no? You go. You go back. Have one more badam halwa. Relax for the day. You know, have some good spa. Go to massage. Tomorrow morning, come back. We will fight. I am here. And he says, the poet, an unknown poet says, his heart was in such a sorrowful state, like a man who is indebted. That is our classical position of debt. That is how we scorn at debt. That is culture. Now,
I must confess, I didn't have a credit card till I was 45.
okay.
That too, it's my wife's credit card.
I hope she.
I have been using it with gear abandoned by then.
So the point here is that all of us are worried about individual debt. The household debt to GDP ratio is hardly 4-5% in India. And that too is of a recent vintage. We never borrow money. Whereas even in China, even you take any of this Anglo-Saxon world or Europe or America, the household debt is high, the corporate debt is high, the government debt is high. Here we have a broken government but a functional household. So this is what is sustaining the government balance sheet. So our policies have to see that this is sustained, mend the state. If the state is mended, the people will automatically mend themselves. So there is a compulsion that the household balance sheet is in a bad state, so the state has to step in. In Nordic nations, it is a classical position that people have a child and then go to marriage. Whereas in India, you would frown upon that. You can't change the society. Yeah? Come on, we are no great seers to change the society. So we have to create an economic model for the society. So that is why I said we cannot ideally take any economic model. It's not a plug and play thing like what you would do. And that's why it is not working.
Yeah, but okay, so let me come to, I had a couple more questions because you talked about in your book that the idea of high taxes doesn't work anymore. So are you are you for, by the way, are you for any taxing at all?
No.
Personal tax, income tax.
See, personal income tax beyond a point has to be levied. It is not that zero taxes, free for all, absolutely permissive society. No. What I'm advocating is the type of...
But you haven't, sorry to interrupt you, you haven't provided a solution to the brazenness of the state governments, all state governments, when they borrow money from the center, now they're demanding. They're actually not worried about balancing out their books. Actually not. So, I mean, Aap knows, Kejriwal knows, I don't give a damn about balancing my book. I'm going to live in debt for the next 5 years and possibly get re-elected because I'm going to do, center is going to give me money. If it doesn't, I'm going to cry till the cows come home. How do you solve that problem?
See, that is a problem for democracy. That has nothing to do with economics. I'm purely an economic man. I will only say that the people of this country have to wake up and solve that problem. It cannot be sorted out by, you expect Kejriwal to come and sort it out? Don't be like a Kejriwal, Anand. Okay, you do not...
You know, you can call me a communist, you can call me from the JNU, but please don't do that.
Okay, I seek your pardon. I think I hurt you. Now
That was worse than indebtedness, the heart was indebted.
Nanjampol, Kalanginan, Ranganathan.
Totally, devastated.
Totally, devastated.
No, but look.
Okay. The fact is, it's a serious one. No politician is going to give a solution for you, Anand, on this. Whether it is Mr. Modi or whether it is Mr. Kejriwal, nobody is going to give you a solution on this point. Nobody talks about it. The bureaucracy revels in a complex tax system because it means that there is huge money to be made personally and officially. It's self-aggrandizement, it is wielding of power. It is a revolution that has to come from within all of us. It is a very long process.
But Anna, what are you talking about?
No, 1 minute. Let me
When
complete.
you talk about revolution, Kejriwal, Kejriwal is the freebie master.
Okay.
Right? if people had to reject freebies, then they wouldn't have voted him with a landslide again.
1 minute, Anand, you are talking in the land of freebies. Here we take money to vote. So you Punjabis are bloody kindergarten stuff. We are PhD stuff. So
Pro Max.
Just keep your cool. So, okay.
Even sari blouses.
A sari blouse, anything we will give. So you understand that I was writing the manifesto of a political party in 2009. The biggest challenge was not on the politics, not on anything else. What is the freebie that we can offer? That everybody broke his skull and came out with ideas. And nobody had any inkling of a thought as to who would fund and how.
This was Rahul Gandhi's Congress? You were?
No. Now you are turning to abuse me. Now the point here is politicians.
But you have to solve this.
You have to solve this. So let us, the last few minutes, let us devote it. This cannot be sorted out by any politician. Don't expect a messiah from the political landscape to come and solve this problem. This problem has to be sorted by you. This is your problem. All of us, when our visitation rights are over in this planet, would love to leave some assets for our children. And if not, we do not want to leave some debts for our children. But collectively, as on date 31st March, we will be leaving 135 lakh crores to our next generation, of which 80 lakh crores will be without any assets.
Suicidal.
That is what is. Now, every country has its own balance sheet. Now, the balance sheet of world GDP to debt to GDP ratio varies. It goes up to 360% in case of Japan and some other.
That's right, yes.
Fair enough. But how much assets that the Japanese government has got? It is not the debt to GDP. The liability minus assets. The assetless portion of the liability to GDP is what worries me in India's case. It's increasing. And we, the people of India, have to solve this problem. For this, I only am reminded by the ants and the grasshopper story. You know, Ranganathan, we should have read this story about ants and the grasshopper. The grasshopper, enjoys the summer. The ant actually works during summer. And ant stores everything. And come winter, the grasshopper is left without food. The ant is, happily feeding itself thanks to its hard work during summer. And the moral of the story is work hard, pay for yourself. Had it to happen now, NDTV will go and show a camera. Shivering grasshopper. Ants are eating. Why? Parliament would pass Prevention of Cruelty to Grasshopper Act. CBDT will give an idea. Grasshopper surcharge.
Yes. ED would rate the ant.
ED would rate the ant. Hota aisa hi hota. Without even this provocation, ED would rate. Okay. Now the point I'm trying to tell you, Anand, is that we have started thinking about economics through our heart, not through our brains.
Very true.
Economics as a subject lends itself, unfortunately, for the thought process. For an emotional thought process. We have to, detach ourselves, think dispassionately, and probably involve the nation to see how this problem can be solved. And this is not something that you and I can discuss, but we can awaken the nation. The whole idea is not to give a solution. It is probably the realization that we are neck deep in problem is the first step to a solution. If the nation realizes there is a debt problem in this country, we will automatically move towards a solution.
Yes, so when you talk about awakening the nation, there's a very grandiose call. Let's take a show of hands here. How many of you would continue to vote for a party that says that we are going to give you 2,000 rupees as a freebie? Okay, no one.
No, but this is not a representative audience. Because I should also be very candid, it may actually have voted in my favor and not in your favor. But I know that this audience is a very enlightened audience. And this audience would know that this is an awakened audience. This is not the audience I am addressing actually.
So when you talk of awakening, you will be stoned outside when you even mention this,
I didn't know that you are converted into a particular religion that you're talking about stoning. Okay.
I'm just mentioning 98, 6, 456, 220, 440, 472.
So, 1 minute, sir. I'll finish. We are in a
Just finishing and then I'll take
I'll
the
come to you, sir.
questions.
Sir, the question is that it is a long haul, but without WhatsApp, without Twitter, without all these economic gadgets, our forefathers fought for this independence. And one call from somebody would naturally arouse the passion of this country. And they did it without all this help. So I think it is eminently possible. The trigger of this country, the emotion trigger of this society is one of, swavalamban, of pride in self, of recognizing and realizing one's own duty. That's why socialism, yes, it has to continue. And not in the way that you are talking about privatization or something. It will be a welfare state for some time. But the state has also to understand that it has to give up on many of these things. There has to be a dialogue. There has to be constant, reiteration of our position. And then probably arrive at some sort of an economic policy that would help people. I have no issues with that. But to turn that help into a reckless spending by the state, as you say, 2,000 rupees, pink pass if you go in a bus, all this is nonsense. This has to stop.
So just to end, and you're quite right, how difficult it is. It's not that politicians don't recognize what we are talking. Of course they do. They don't even need people or intellectuals or experts or, people like me to even say this. They have people who've told them this.
You are an intellectual. No, I'm not an intellectual.
I was talking about him as an intellectual, not me. Intellectual is an abuse. For example, in the past history, immediate past history, I can think of two leaders who've actually said this, who've sugar-coated it, but they've said it. What needs to be said? One was Narendra Modi, who said the government has no business to be in business. And then, of course, he was so scared of saying it that he never even followed what he said for 8 years and still doesn't follow. And the other was Manmohan Singh. When the diesel prices were increased, he said, "Paise ped pe nahi ugte." So it's not that leaders don't understand that there is no such thing as a free lunch.
Exactly.
It is that I don't know what it is. Maybe what you say is partially to do with it or largely to do with it. They must win elections. Because where is Manmohan Singh now? Had he gone true on his promise, ki, yes, I will keep on increasing, I will, deregulate or whatever. So it's a very difficult thing. On that note, it's been an absolute pleasure talking with MRV Anna, and we have time for a couple of questions if we can. I think Sir wanted to ask a question. Shall I give you the mic?
I have my certain observations on that. You said 1991 socialism was demolished. I was in industry ministry. I was one of the draftsmen of the NIP. Kindly read through the NIP. How much of socialism is disputable? It was only, as they call it, transfer of power. Not even a transfer of power, transfer of the type of power which will be exerted upon the entrepreneurs. Instead of an approval, it said approval. Instead of a previous long-term license, it simply said automatic approval shall be granted by the government. That is the nuances. Nothing was changed. The industry corridors of Udyog Bhavans continued to be filled with dalals chasing papers. Even now, FIPB approvals are chased by dalals. That's number one. So socialism, what extent the bureaucracy allowed it to dilute is $1 million question. I have been one of them. So it's a confession. Number two, you said the state is getting into welfare of your group with the 3 lists under the Schedule 7. I would like to correct it. The state pretends to do welfare, not really. How much of welfare has been done by entering into anybody's bathroom? Narendra Modi government might have introduced the bathrooms, but beyond that, that was a game changer. Beyond that, prior to that, very little welfare. As I said, even the NAC, which wanted to be a National Advisory Council, turned out to be a National Adversity Council. That is number 2. Number 3, the FRBM Act was passed by P. Chidambaram in 2004. fiscal responsibility and budget management man. How much of fiscal responsibility and budget management he did. There are a lot of evidences of how consultants were paid to chase proposals, indiscreet investment proposals with no merit, how Chess Consulting was doing it and how they are in trouble is before you, is also well known. PMLA Act was again passed by Mr. Chidambaram in 2005, although notified in 2009, under a severe pressure from the FATF. How much of PMLA efficacy was swallowed by Chidambaram himself is also in front of you. So this is how the certain compulsions, certain international compulsions, UAPA Act and the NIA was passed under Article 253 under a lot of severe pressure from, otherwise we were not interested in even tackling a very big menace like terrorism. It is after the US pressure under 253 article, international pressure, it was passed. You can see the objection reasons preamble of the UAPA 2008. There also individual terrorist was not defined, only in 2018 it was brought in. Otherwise, a man could be associated with a terrorist organization but still walk free. So, how much of governance, how much of Babus do it, and how much of fiscal responsibility, if the foreign tours, the petrols, the staff cars, and so many huge expenses on the different heads of the government, heads starting with 2,000 or for program budgets, 3,000, 3,642 and all that heads known as salary, which is untouched, which almost constitutes 60% of the non-planned budget of every ministry. It could be 60%, 68%, you can do an analysis on that. So with this type of liability being carried forward, and it is not today, it is perpetual. About the citizens also, I will tell you a joke. In a crowded bus, when somebody's legs were being pressed by another person, "Arey, mera pair sarkari nahi hai." That is the attitude of the citizens, which has come under over a period of long time of socialism, that even हमारा जूते में भी कोई दगाता हो तो सरकार should interfere. Even if I am slapped on the road, government will come. The hankering for government job is also only because of that. It is not that any such, see the riots which happen in Railway Recruitment Board or so many other things. These are all a pattern. They don't want to be entrepreneurs. They don't want to be entrepreneurs. See what happened earlier when the enterprises were given, whatever under control, how many of them came under the Sikh Industries Companies Act, and they were dying to come under SICA and get into BIFR, so that nowadays, since those are missing, we all Vijay Malayas and Nirav Modis migrating out of the country and walking away with debts. Earlier, they had a gateway through SICA, so that the eternity of the BIFR will go on and on for 20 years. They can walk away with some minor payments. These are all the realities of Indian governance. It is a governance failure, irrespective of the political party. Everybody has done this. This is what I wanted to submit before you. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Sir, we have talked about corruption, several platforms. Today we are slightly moving away from corruption at a political level to, we are not, black money is there, is a problem. Sir, you don't tell me I am handling black money on daily basis or in the courts and other places. So I know that there is a menace of black money. But the issue is not only black money. We are looking at what could be an economic policy suited for this country. That is the debate. We will address black money. Black money is a part of it. Sometimes black money propels growth rather than, it is not so dangerous to have black money in the economy also. Yes, sir. Yeah. Yeah. It is not that it cannot be solved. That's why I said it requires a national awakening. We require to debate on these points. We require to understand that we are in a huge debt crisis, if not in crisis, at least in some sort of a bother. So we need to put into the spotlight as to what it is. And frankly, for the last 70 years, we have just felt the stones and crossed the river in so far as economics is concerned. We never had something that would suit the genius of these people. An ideal economic policy for India, sometimes we said globalization, sometimes we said socialism, sometimes we said we will allow the commanding heights of the economy to be managed by the state. Sometimes we said we are jolly well, a capitalist society. We are not focused on something that would be a true economic model that would ideally be suited for this country. Hence this debate.
Sir, quick question, sir.
If I can just-
observation.
Yeah, just on that thing, when you say who will solve it, well, it's very easy because we've had it in the past. If we don't solve this, other nations will solve it for us. Why do you think 1991 liberalization happened? It's because our foreign reserves that are today $650 billion at that point of time were $0.6 billion. We set sail on a ship, our gold to mortgage to Bank of England. So it was IMF and International and World Bank that arm twisted us to go for liberalization. So if we can't solve it, after 20, 30 years, the world will solve it for us. Question is, do we solve it, take the initiative, realize our errors, or do we wait for 20 years and then, let the world solve it for us?
Correct.
Last question. Because
correct. That's the balance of payments crisis, what you mentioned. Sir, a quick one. There is a classical definition of socialism and capitalism. Socialism is the equal distribution of poverty, and capitalism is the unequal distribution of wealth. So now, the import is very well known. So how do we communicate this to the masses? Because unequal distribution of wealth is definitely better, but we need to make it an equal distribution of wealth by purging all these devils, what you mentioned, democracy, populism, regressive state, all these things, and unions and all these things which are a problem for that.
Sir, I never said anything about anybody, sir.
No, you just
Don't put words into my
No,
mouth.
you told devil is the democracy, you told.
Yeah, devil is the democracy.
Definitely.
That is only a metaphor.
That's a metaphor. It's a valid one, sir. What I'm saying is these are irritants in the process. So how do we communicate, like how Vikas was made as a movement by Modi for communicating Vikas, like this, how capitalism in a sense can be made as a mass movement and smashing all these PSUs and white elephants. So that is the need of the...
Okay, I got the question. I'll let Anand answer.
And I'm a big fan of you. You told about Alva. Alva in the north is secular. Halwa in the south is communal. In your own style.
Of what I had heard was that in socialism, man exploits man, and in capitalism, it's vice versa. But the issue, right, with us, and I think Anand will agree with us, is that did you know that 21% of our yearly budget allocation of 28 lakh crores, 21% of it goes in propping up public sector units? There are 825 public sector units, both center and states. 400 of them are non-functional. We are still paying for it. Did you know that chlorofluorocarbons that were banned in the late 1980s, and the people who discovered the ozone hole got the Nobel Prize for it, Modi government closed down a chlorofluorocarbon Hindustan facility in 2019. 40 years after CFCs were banned. We didn't have the guts to ban a public sector unit that wasn't making chlorofluorocarbons for 30 years. But our state was paying thousands of crores for it. Solution is in front of us. If we pretend we can't see it, it is not the solution's problem. Last question. I think we've totally run out of time.
So we could share? Time share it? Almost probably. No, mine is just this thing. So we are talking about Atmanirbharta. Why are we talking about Atma Vishwas?
See, Atmanirbhar includes Atmavishwas.
You think so?
Yes, very much. Okay. You can't be Atmanirbhar with an external agent doing a Vishwas on you.
I'm asking you why. Okay.
That's a very interesting question.
Yeah.
I'll tell you why that's a very interesting question. Because in order to be a very a labor economy, labor-intensive economy, which is sustaining the world like Vietnam is, you don't need Atma Vishwas. You need to be Atmanirbhar. So that's a deep question, according to me. I might be wrong.
No, I'm not dismissing. I'm saying Atmanirbhar include Atma Vishwas. No, see that is. Sir, you seem to be a very intelligent man, but you are also following Malini and Raghuram Rajan.
No, one second. No,
what is-
I'll do a proper introduction
No, no.
of him.
Okay.
He's a projects director for IIT Madras.
No, no, I respect you, sir. I'm only putting it on the lighter side. I hope you take it in a, just to make your audience feel light at the end of the day. There's nothing to do with your question is well taken, sir, but Atmanirbhar should include Atma Vishwas. Okay, I presume it does. Lila, let us. No, there must be some thought process into it. I agree with you, but
No, I think it is helpful. It is helpful. Atmanirbharta is important, but we mustn't lose the overall goal of it. For example, if you look at the data, 87% of what we source from China, people have done the research. It's not me. I just love data, so I got it. 87% of everything that we get from China can be sourced from a third country cheaper. Why haven't we done it? Why are our imports even more now after Galwan? So, solution is in front of us. It's not
Other thing adding to his point is when he says Atma Vishwas and when he talks about patent, you know how the patent application regime is in India. You are not given patent for a software, whereas US gives it. So it's very difficult to actually for an inventor to develop something and bring a product out. Now my continuation with the same question is, this economic development is when the nation develops, when there are many people who are able to provide work, jobs. You have GST. The current issue on the refund is magnanimous. There is a disparity. There are people who have refund sitting in their account, but they are not able to take it out. There is a difference in the rate. You know about it. The second aspect is on the tax structure. We have the most complex tax structure ever. What is the percentage of people paying tax? Very less.
1%.
Why can't we simplify that to start off with? Reduce the percentile of tax, simplify the structure, improve the collection. That itself will be a difference, number one. Number two, if I were to start a company today, and if I were to go to a portal and start registering, it is so complex. I don't get the name, I have to follow ABCD process, the portals don't work. So unless and until those things are not simplified, you say you want a make in India, but if you see the process, it's so complex.
Sir, 1 minute. We are fully in agreement with you. In fact, I have been crying hoarse that the ease of doing business in India has to improve several notches. This particular conversation with Anand and I are having are not about ease of doing business. We agree with you. This is very important. But that must be subsumed by a small part of your Atmanirbhar policy, which is subsumed by a larger economic policy. Now, we have not yet decided whether we want to be an economic giant through manufacturing or through services or simply, மொட்டமாடியில் போய் படுத்துன்னு நட்சத்திரத்தை எண்ணி we want to become.
நான் சொல்றது survival.
I understand. So we will keep this question outside, sir, if you don't mind. I agree with you. 100% I have been crying hoarse that this government must reduce the corrosiveness in taxation but if taxes become simple, where do I make the money?
I'm also in the same boat.
There's no one else like no, but I want to add this is turning out to be a case of Chinese tortures, and I'm not. This is one tragedy heaped upon another one. When we talk about economy, when we talk of Atma Vishwasam, there are low-hanging fruits that any guy who's in class 6 can see. I'll give you one. How many examples do you want? I'll give you one example. Do you know?
A professor can see, anybody can see.
Even a JNU professor can see, so you can imagine. You know how many foreign tourists visit India every year? 9 million. Okay? How many foreign tourists visit France every year? 93 million. Need I say more? India, UAE has more hotel rooms than India. Bangladesh, most of our foreign tourists are from Bangladesh. Now, I'm not saying legal or illegal, but this is from a Government of India document, tourism industry. Bodh Gaya should be the Vatican of the East. Japan should be giving us $1 trillion. In fact, they probably want to. South Korea, Japan, even China. But do you know what is the annual municipal budget of Bodh Gaya? It is equivalent to 3 full-page newspaper ads by a political party. Why shouldn't we cry? Tell me. Why shouldn't we call this a banana republic? When, as you said, a JNU professor can see a low-hanging fruit. And this is 100% remittance. I mean, this is foreign exchange 100%. And eco-friendly. Eco-friendly. We are developing our culture, our temples. Jagannath Puri, the pride of India. How many foreign tourists visit? 1 lakh. That's it. Jagannath Puri. What are we talking about? Don't get me angry.
How do you see the insolvency and bankruptcy code? When I see the data since 2017, I think around 363 cases have been sorted out in NCLT, and average 80% haircut has been given. When we talk about the capitalization in the country, when we are doing the privatization, and when we are giving 80% haircut, is it not the legalization of the corruption in the corporate sector?
I fully agree with you. NCLT was brought in as a knee-jerk reaction to solve the menace of 10 corporates, which were listed in that, I forgot that name, Gupta's report, which was there in that 2012 Gupta report of, I think it was Credit Suisse, from the Credit Suisse. Now, we sorted that. We don't know what to do with this act. I'm taking a bet, like PMLA, either it will become abused or it will lie a natural death in the next few years.
In this just one example, like Ruchi Soya has been purchased by the Patanjali by giving around 80% haircut. So most of the amount and the 20% also has been financed by the banks. And again, within 2 years, the Patanjali has come out with the FPO 4,000 crore. Means again, he just taken the company out of the public money through the banks, and again he is coming to the public through equity market. So ultimately, the person who is having the good relation with the government, just running the company. So it's just like either we are talking about.
Sir, I agree with you. This is not a standoff or a standalone example. No, I fully agree with you. But today, again, I repeat, we are not into all this minor nitpicking on. We want to have a much macro view. That's why we got in Anand. If all this don't turn it into a CPE seminar of Institute of Chartered Accountants.
No, he's absolutely right, because we are looking at the more philosophical thing. Also, secondly, he is Baba Ramdev's lawyer. So I think at that, on that succinct note, can I just say it's been an absolute pleasure.
So one question, sir. One question.
So
Sorry, because
if the organizers, okay.
Okay, rupee can become the reserve currency if you can go and hang some Iraq prime minister or president or something. If you have the dollar is the only currency backed by the army. You must understand it. It is not backed by gold. It is not backed by anything else. It is the only currency backed by missiles and tanks. The day when we have a currency backed by missiles and tanks and fighter aircrafts like F-35, F-65, F-95, whatever, we can also do that. But do we want to become a superpower in that sense? That is also a question. You may agree, sir. I don't agree. I don't want to be a superpower of that nature. I want to be a superpower which will give knowledge to the world, not threaten and destroy. No, again, please, again, don't put words into my mouth. I think, No, 1 minute, 1 minute.
He doesn't like Atmanirbhar. He doesn't like Vishwaguru.
Are you protecting? No, sir, 1 minute, 1 minute. 1 minute. Did I ever say we should not protect our? I am talking about going outside, invading a country and hanging a president. That is the answer to that question. One Vaikunta Ekadasi, they preferably. Okay, last question.
Sir, namaste, sir. It's a great opportunity to meet all three of you because we have
We are only two of us.
No, Mr.
Oh, okay, okay.
Ratan, sir. Because, no. I'm sorry. Because we have seen you in Republican times now where you get less, 30 seconds time.
No,
at
Anand is
time.
lucky, he gets 30, I don't get 3 nanoseconds.
And sir, you've been talking about the privacy in the government, in the state. See, there's Article 35 and 35A, where there's a lot of distinction between the Mohammedans and Hindus. So once that gets settled, then we will have much more space into the life.
Sir, again I repeat, I have not come here to debate 35, 35A, 30, 31, 25, 26. We can debate it any other day, any other session. Sir, today we are talking about economics. If you have anything on economics, we will definitely discuss.
Because I raised this
Sir,
because
yes.
it's
Sir, please, last question.
in conjunction, so I just want
No. All these things are important. I am not belittling them. They're probably more important. Let us focus on the subject. Sir.
Okay.
It's not a question. On a lighter note, you're chartered, I'm a cost accountant, so work in a private German company, and we are only paid in any private company 25% of our salary if we perform well. You know, there is a bell curve, and the money is distributed on performance. So I know India's richest municipality loses 93% of its income in salaries. Do you think performance-based payment to government employees and the PSUs and should be part of economic policy?
Sir, I would love to see that happen. Okay, not because it's a very popular answer, because that's the most pragmatic one. But the next question should be, will it happen? And who will bell the cat?
Well, we'll leave that to the politicians. But
No.
in your
This is what I say. It cannot be left to the
But in your personal wisdom, like he has given, in your personal wisdom, do you think it's the right step in the economic policy?
So we have to move towards a larger economic policy that would sustain India as a super economic power. No doubt about it. If it takes an S to achieve that, we will do this.
Okay.
Okay. If it says no to achieve that, also no.
Okay.
And let me end by repeating what Narendra Modi said. No, not Mitro or anything else. A government has no business to be in business. Absolutely. If you truly understand that, believe in that, and bring it to fruition, forget 5 trillion economy. India would be a developed nation within 5 years. On that note, let me thank MRV Anna and the audience for a wonderful interaction.